Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Center Podcast. I'm Emilia Zhivatovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here. Each episode features 3 sections. First is the Science Says section, where we summarize a recent research study and show you how to put the science into action. Next, we give you a research-based life hack with simple strategies for incorporating positive psychology into your life for greater well-being. And then our Practitioner Corner is where we interview someone who's out there living, breathing, and spreading positive psychology in their own unique way. Learn about how they're growing their personal and professional work and get inspired with strategies for how you might use positive psychology in your own life. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome. In today's podcast, we first explore a research study that showed that people's mood can impact their handwriting and what that tells us about the role of emotions and behavioral performance. From that, we look at how you can create more of the emotion of creativity using very simple life hacks. And then I'll introduce you to Dr. Cheryl Lanlier, a positive applied psychology-based human performance technology expert. Oh my goodness, say that 3 times fast. She's an incredible woman who holds a doctorate in business administration who's integrating positive psychology into technology. I can't wait to introduce you to her and can't wait to share all of these yummy research-based interventions with you today. Let's dive in. Today's Science Says may initially sound a bit odd, but will make sense to you shortly. It's called Mood Impact on Automaticity of Performance, Handwriting as an Exemplar, recently published in the Journal of Cognitive Computation. In this study, they looked to understand what impact mood would make on people's penmanship. A group of participants came into the study where they first had their handwriting measured. Then they were induced into an emotion, either a negative emotion task, a neutral emotion task, or a positive emotion task. And you may think to yourself, well, how do you induce emotion? This is frequently done in interventions simply by having people watch a film clip or do an autobiographical recall. They found that the people who were in the negative mood induction had shorter width and height in their penmanship compared to people who were in the positive or neutral mood. This research study supports a concept in psychology that we call broaden and build and narrow and focus. It points to the fact that emotions impact us in different ways, and that when we are in a negative emotional state, we tend to narrow our thoughts and our actions, which is being demonstrated even in the fact that people's penmanship is actually getting narrowed or getting smaller or getting constricted. Whereas when we're in a positive emotional space, we tend to be more broadened and we tend to be more open. And this also shows up in the way that we think, in the way that we perform, and the things that we can see. So this very simple intervention is actually pointing further evidence to the idea that when we are in a negative emotional state, we constrict. We tend to notice less options around us. We tend to act in a more focused way. And we can use this understanding that negative emotions and positive emotions impact us differently in the way that we show up in the world and the behaviors that we take on. Up next, we explore how we can use this concept to get greater creativity in our life. Today's life hack is all about how to get greater creativity. Now, I don't mean creativity in the broader sense of having a life of creativity. I'm referring to the moment-by-moment emotion of feeling more creative. And this is an important differentiation because oftentimes people think, oh, I'm not creative, and they refer to creativity as a trait that they possess, as opposed to looking at it as a state that they can get into. And the key to getting into a more creative state is to explore the role of emotions in one's life, because research shows that when we are in a more positive emotional state, we are more broadened, we are more creative, we are more curious, whereas when we are in a negative emotional state, we are more narrowed and we are more focused. This points to the importance of exploring how to utilize emotions to help us show up in the world the way that we want to. Creativity in particular is one that requires more positivity, which means we either need to be more open, we need to have time, we need to have spaciousness in our life in order to get creative. Or we can explore how to induce this positivity with emotions that we can gather more readily, such as gratitude. So if I am feeling more narrowed or feeling more focused and I need to get creative, I think about how I can induce more gratitude in my emotional state in order to help me show up in the world the way that I want to. I'll sit down and I'll make a gratitude list of as many things as I can think of to be grateful for. Or rather than needing to create something in that moment, I just do some free association writing to get myself in a more positive emotional space. Or I'll go for a walk to clear my mind, to broaden myself so that I can get more creative. Because there's nothing worse than trying to create something new, getting frustrated at yourself that you're not. Because frustration creates the antithesis to what we're trying to experience at that moment, which is more positive emotion so we can get more broadened. So next time you're needing to create something new, ask yourself, am I in the right emotional space to do this? And if you're not, then explore how you can use the science of positive psychology to create the emotion that you want to experience. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. With me, I have Dr. Cheryl Lanlier joining us from Dallas, Texas. She holds a doctorate of business administration with a concentration in information systems. And today, she works as a positive applied psychology-based human performance technology expert. Holy cow, say that 2 times fast. Positive applied psychology-based human performance technology expert. What this means is that she helps people and the organizations they work for adopt and utilize technology in the best way possible. I think that is absolutely incredible because so much of our world is dependent on technology today, and I cannot wait for us to dive in with Cheryl and learn more about what she does and how. A little known fact about Cheryl is actually that she's an introvert. And she grew up with a big family where her mother was always encouraging her to speak up more and speak up more. So she's learned how to play extrovert, even though she recharges best when she gets her downtime and alone time, but she loves people. So let's dive into learning more. Cheryl, tell us about how you got onto this fascinating path.
Sure. I'm always a nerd geek, and I taught myself computers after my great aunt worked for Apple back when it was Apple and not Macworld. Anyway, I learned to love technology, and I've always been in charge of my siblings. Being the oldest girl, I was always in charge of getting everyone to do what they were supposed to do. So I learned to herd cats early on, and I also learned to develop systems to get people to do things in the house, recording things, writing things down, giving rewards. So I just began using what I knew to do on paper with technology, like computers and Word and coding and all that nerd, blah, blah, blah stuff. But that's what started me. I cut my teeth just using technology for myself. And always, whenever I worked, I was always asked to help people learn to use such and such software, or Cheryl knows how to use that. So that's how I kind of carved out this niche for myself, doing things this way. So long answer, but that's the truth.
That is amazing because I hear how you took your passion for people and behavior and looked at how technology could be used to enhance people's behavior and their performance. And then I'm curious, where did positive psychology come into the journey?
Well, as you know, people do things when they want to do things, and that applies even to technology. I was always dealing with resistance to new systems and new technology, and always had to figure out what motivated that person to make the changes required to use whatever technology or software or hardware. And when I trained people, I learned it worked best if I understood what motivated them. So that's how positive applied psychology and human behavior, cognitive behavior, that's how I became fascinated with all of that. And just can't get people to do stuff they don't want to until they want to. So
what an awesome journey, Cheryl. Tell us, what are some of the ways that you work with individuals and with organizations today?
Well, today my title would be most known as an organizational change management consultant. That's the long title I have. But basically, I work with different projects with the government and oil and gas, people that are under mandates to make changes, especially with technology. Like my best project with the oil and gas industry was the Intelligent Pipeline Solution, where we geospatially monitor gas in the pipelines that are in catastrophic areas. So I know that sounds really dangerous, but it was a lot of fun, just helping people learn to use technology to monitor what was going on under the ground. Lots of fun. And then working with NASA and GE and different organizations that have big projects with the government and with oil and gas to make changes they need to make. That's what I do all day. And I work on contract because most of my work is project-based. So having me in-house or as an employee usually doesn't work out for most organizations. So I work based on contracts.
That's awesome, Cheryl. And what are some of the intersections you see between positive psychology and this approach to technology that you take?
I've worked with the father of CALM, which is Computer-Aided Leadership and Management. His name is Morton Middlefart. And I took a little further his research he did on exactly what I said earlier, that people use technology and adopt and utilize it for the best way possible for them when they want to use it, when they're motivated to use it. So I just transferred that over into the workplace. And I use different systems, methodology, most importantly, positive applied psychology, because, again, there's a way to motivate people. There's a way to even describe the success criteria for a goal in a way that motivates people and makes them jazzed up and excited about it. And it makes it an experience instead of just a task. I live in that world of trying to make sure that any project, any software, any hardware is an experience to use it, not giving up their old way of working, which people love to do what they habitually do, and they're successful at it. So when here you come trying to help them by changing what they already do, so you have to use positive applied psychology. You have to motivate people. You have to help people goal meet and not goal set to get to the end result of a project, which is on time, on budget, and the change is actually happening.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. It's such a fascinating intersection between these two sciences. I'm curious, in what ways has positive psychology impacted you on a personal level?
Oh, my goodness. I can tell you the last 3 years of my life have been the most personally challenging years ever, with a dual diagnosis of cancer in my family, me, myself, moving and living in an area that was devastated by natural disaster, getting married, having his mother become very ill. So I began to not have the same motivation and zest and zazazing, for life, because I was dealing with so much on the interpersonal. So for me, I had to go back and relearn or re-educate myself on the principles that I taught in the workplace. They applied to my personal life. And I had to overcome some things and get on better footing personally using positive applied psychology and the principles. Perma V is just how I live my life. I am always focused on those areas of my life and my circle of life and trying to stay balanced, because my interpersonal life got unbalanced due to tragedy and things beyond my control. So I had to take my own medicine, eat my own dog food, as I like to say, and it really helped me. I'm in a good place now, and I'm happy about it.
Wow. I'm celebrating your resilience, Cheryl. I can just hear the plethora of opportunities to put positive psychology skills into practice. And I'm celebrating that you're on the other end. It reminds me of the quote by Winston Churchill that when you feel like you're going through hell, just keep going, because you do get to the other end at some point. But obviously it doesn't feel like that when you're in it.
No, it didn't. Took a long while, but I would definitely say it works if you worked it. So, and don't stop. And never, ever, 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 ever give up. You got to keep moving.
So what I hear you saying is that you utilized specific tools that obviously at some point they just become pretty ingrained in you to help you keep showing up for yourself, keep showing up for those around you. Can you think of any specific tools that maybe our listeners who might be going through a similar situation could apply themselves?
The first tool would be that of a reflective system, some self-compassion. I think people like me, type A personalities, introverts, we can be very hard on ourselves of why we're not responding or reacting to a situation better. I learned to use that tool and just have a reflective system and be self-compassionate. I think that's my number one tool that I use. The other is goal meeting and flourishing versus just goal setting. I'm a list maker. I work off of a planner and a schedule. And I found until I learned flourishing and self-compassion and some of those things, the tools that I learned in my positive applied psychology courses, I really wasn't accessing and utilizing things. I was just completing tasks. Like my list, my planner would be beautiful and filled out, but I wasn't actually accomplishing things on there. So that's another tool that works for me. Some of my hardware tools that I use, besides the smartphone like everybody has, but I have a lot of apps that I use that help automatize some of the things and habitualize some of the things that I need to get done during the day. I took a lot of mundane tasks too, like cleaning and grocery shopping and all those things. I use technology. I order my groceries and they're either delivered to me or I go pick them up. Just things like that. They seem like small things, but they free up your time so that you can be your best self. And that's like you said, show up how you want to show up in the world. I'm not rushed. I'm not pressed for time. I'm not folding laundry when I'd rather be reading a good book or drinking a good glass of wine or going to dinner with my friends, or some of the things that require me to be kinder to myself and get out of myself. So those are some of the tools that I use.
Yeah, and let me capitalize on some of the things you just said. So listeners who may not be familiar with our goal meeting versus goal setting approach, I just want to take a moment to backtrack and to share some of those strategies with you. So Cheryl is referring to the approach that we teach in the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program, where we say a lot of people goal set and they teach goal setting and there are whole systems in place for goal setting. But just because you set a goal doesn't mean that you know how to meet a goal. And so what we focus on is looking at the science of goal meeting, not just goal setting. And it's really important that we do things like state our goals in the affirmative and in the positive, meaning what we want, not what we don't want, because it takes a lot more energy to not do something than it does to do something. And the science confirms that an approach goal, meaning a goal of something you want to achieve, is better than an avoidance goal. So for example, I want to eat a salad and soup for dinner tonight instead of don't eat the pizza when I'm going out with my friends. We want to state the goal in the positive. And we can also utilize other strategies that are based on science and how to goal meet instead of goal set. We can utilize strategies such as creating pitfall plans or what's called implementation intentions.